Hi, my name is Karen Fabian and I am the founder of Bare Bones Yoga, and welcome to the last video. This is actually a bonus video in my video series, my online training called the Bare Bones Yoga Learn Yoga Challenge, and it's been something I did throughout the entire month of January 2018. And the 8 videos that comprise the challenge are on my YouTube channel here. And during the challenge, I had this idea of doing a special bonus video on the idea of myofascial release, or what's commonly called foam rolling, because it fits in nicely with the training's overall view of anatomy and key muscles used in the context of yoga. And it starts to get into a little bit more of the detail of the anatomy of the body. So I thought it would be nice to kind of round out the challenge with this extra video focusing on this specific technique. And we really don't see this technique used a lot in yoga practice because, of course, in the practice itself, we're really more looking at the contraction and the lengthening of muscles as it happens in yoga poses. But certainly for any of you watching this who go to the gym or who maybe do this at home, or maybe go to a massage therapist, which even though they're not using a foam roller, that's in part the technique they're using. This idea of myofascial release is really the common thread between foam rolling, ball rolling, massage, that kind of thing. So if you're not doing it, and you are practicing yoga, and you do find that you have some tight spots, it is helpful to integrate this as part of your self-care routine. And understanding a little bit more about what's going on here, even if you're not actually applying pressure to the muscle, there is an aspect of this that does actually appear in yoga practice, even without the apparatus of the foam roll and the balls. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So to start out, if you're new to the Bare Bones Yoga Challenge and you're starting here at this video, I want to encourage you to go back and start out with the introduction. There are 8 videos, and the purpose of my creating this online training was to give people the key actions, the alignment, and the anatomy related to several key yoga poses. And when you go onto my website, barebonesyoga.com, on the home page in the middle, you'll see a link to the Bare Bones Yoga Challenge. So if you want to start from the beginning and you're here on YouTube and you don't have the instruction guide, just go to my website and download it. And that'll give you everything you need to know in terms of how to use this challenge to benefit your practice. The idea here is to use these videos to supplement your knowledge so that when you go into class, you'll be armed with all sorts of really good information about the alignment, how to do the postures, and the anatomy behind them, so that a lot of what you'll hear for cues, you might actually even know a little bit more than the average student about what's going on underneath the skin. All right, so let's start out here by talking a little kind of academically. This will be a little bit like a workshop actually. And we're going to go through a little bit of what's happening from a nervous system perspective. So I made a couple notes here so that we can refer to them, and to kind of chunk out some of the concepts here into some high-level ideas. And these are important ideas to understand if you want to kind of get a sense of the overall picture of what happens when you're using things like a foam roller. So the first thing is to understand that when we talk about foam rolling or ball rolling or applying pressure to the body, we're really trying to have an impact on what are known as mechanoreceptors. And mechanoreceptors are specialized sensory receptors that respond to pressure, or in this case, what is known as deformation of tissues. So whenever you're applying some pressure to the tissues of your body, right, and muscle can be considered a tissue, just like the fascia can be. The fascia is on top of the muscle before the skin. You're applying pressure and you're deforming the muscle in some way. And when you do that, these mechanoreceptors, which live in the muscle, are responsive to that touch, to that pressure. one of the types of mechanoreceptors is called the muscle spindle. And the muscle spindles are small mechanoreceptors found in the belly of the muscle. And skeletal muscle in particular, so we're not talking about cardiac muscle in the heart or smooth muscle which lines the organs. We're talking about skeletal muscle, which is in the muscles that create movement. And so these muscle spindles are found in the belly of the skeletal muscle, and they measure the amount and rate of stretch. So if you think here, let's take the psoas muscle that begins on the low back and ends on the femur. Embedded in the belly of that muscle are these muscle spindles. If you look at the quadriceps, which runs primarily on the thigh to the knee, although if you remember from one of the earlier videos, one of the quadriceps muscles, the rectus femoris, starts on the hip and ends on the knee. But you can imagine kind of the length of the muscle appearing here. Embedded in the belly of the muscle are these muscle spindles. So they're going to measure the amount and rate of stretch. Now, here's the key part. When the muscle is lengthened too much or too quickly, the muscle spindle sends impulses to the central nervous system, resulting in contraction as a protective response. So once you start to understand this, you can just get an appreciation for how amazing the body is, that these muscle spindles that are embedded in the belly of the muscle can sense when the deformation or the pressure applied to the muscle is creating too much pressure. And as a response to that, to protect the muscle itself, it creates a contraction. Now, along with muscle spindles, there's another kind of mechanoreceptors, and these are known as the Golgi tendon organs, or commonly called GTO. And the Golgi tendon organs are not so much in the belly of the muscle, but they appear more at the junction where the muscle and the tendon lies. And they measure the amount and rate of tension that develops within the muscle. So if we think about muscles like the muscle complex like the hamstring, which begins on the ischial tuberosity in the back here and inserts on the knee, we're talking about the GTO residing at this junction where the tendon and the muscle converge. So you can imagine the hamstrings here all converging. Well, if you thought they're really running in this direction, right? Because this is where the hamstring starts and this is where it ends. So let's talk about it at its insertion point. So all the heads of the hamstrings inserting on the back of the knee, and at that point where the muscle becomes tendon, right? Because tendon is the connective tissue connection to the bone. That's where these Golgi tendon organs are, versus the spindles, which are in the belly of the muscle. So again, if the tension is too much or too quick, let's say you're doing some kind of action, some kind of stretch, maybe a down dog, maybe you're running and you trip and all of a sudden you need to contract your hamstring to prevent you from falling, the Golgi tendon organ will cause the muscle to relax. So during stretching, the protective relaxation occurs after the muscle spindle causes the contraction. So there's that relationship between relax and contract. After 30 seconds or so of contraction, the relaxation occurs. And that's really key. It doesn't happen immediately. It really takes about half a minute. At that point, after those 30 seconds, the joint can be taken further into its range of motion. And this entire process is known as autogenic inhibition. So it's autogenic, it's unconscious, it's not something that we have to think about. It's the body's self-protective mechanism to stay in touch with what's happening at the level of the muscle belly, the junction of the tendon, and the muscle at the point where it originates or inserts in terms of the muscle itself, and creating relaxation after the contraction, the protective contraction occurs. So this idea of foam rolling or ball rolling is, from a technique perspective, known as self-myofascial release, or SMR. And, I think we use that term a little bit more in the personal training field. A lot of this information actually comes from the National Association of Sports Medicine training guide, and as a personal trainer as well as a yoga teacher, that was part of my education and what I had to learn. And so it kind of partners well with yoga teaching because it's helpful to understand some of this as well as the yoga practice itself. So SMR uses this CNS response to release knots in the muscle. So I think most people understand that when they're doing foam rolling, they're really trying to get rid of a knot. But what often people don't get is what's really happening underneath the skin. And this is this whole process of autogenic inhibition. So SMR, by applying gentle force to adhesions in the muscle, the fibers of muscle are straightened out instead of bunched up. So if you think about the concept of a knot, you can imagine the muscle fibers in the belly of the muscle itself all bunched up. But with this applying some pressure, creating this autogenic response, allowing the muscle to relax, the fibers can straighten out a little bit more, so they lie more congruent with the direction of the muscle fiber. So not every muscle, of course, has fibers running longitudinally. Sometimes they might run horizontally, so it really depends. Sometimes in the instance of the internal and external obliques up in the side body here, you might see some layering of muscle fibers. So it really depends on the muscle itself, but we're trying to straighten out those muscle fibers. So the relaxation response used in SMR or foam or ball rolling is essentially tapping into this autogenic inhibition. So you apply pressure via the rolling, and when you find a tight spot, stay still on that spot for 30 seconds. And that's really the key. I think oftentimes when I go to the gym, I'll see people just kind of furiously rolling, and that's it. Without holding at any point, you're really missing out on where you want to see the benefit. So let's take, as an example, let's take a look at the muscles of the hip that are external rotators. So these are muscles that reside in the back of the body, and they connect the pelvis to the femur, and they're responsible for externally rotating the hip. So if I was in a squat here, right, something like this, external rotation of the hip. And so these are muscles like the piriformis and the gemelli muscles and the obturator muscles. So if I were to foam roll those muscles, I could start out something like this. So I'm taking this leg into external rotation. And I could begin to roll, and here it's more of a diffuse technique, but I'm feeling for a tight spot. And when I feel a tight spot, right there, I can stay on the spot and apply pressure. So now what I'm asking my body to do is start to trigger that autogenic inhibition. So I'm applying the pressure, applying that deformation on the muscle itself, triggering the relaxation response. And so this is the kind of thing where you're here and you're, maybe taking a couple of deep breaths. And then you might move on. You could do it on the other side, right? And this is, of course, just looking at how this works in regards to these muscles, but you can do it really with any part of the body. So you're feeling for where the tightness is, and then applying pressure and taking a couple of deep breaths in between. Another part of the body where it's common to have some tightness and where something like the massage ball can work really well is the plantar fascia. And this is the thick band of tissue at the base of the foot that runs from the heel to the base of the toes. And so, especially in runners, we see a lot of tightness here. So the balls work really well in this regard because they just fit so nicely. So you're really looking for the same thing. You're looking for those tight spots, and then it's a matter of holding and taking a couple deep breaths
and seeing if you can get some of that relaxation response to kick in. And I can even say, just from doing it here, I can feel quite a bit of sensation in the bottoms of my feet, and the longer I apply pressure, I can start to feel some tingling in my toes. So it's really pretty remarkable how this kind of thing creates sensation right away. Keeping in mind too that, we're talking of course about the muscle, and I did use the word fascia before, but just remembering that essentially your Spider-Man suit that goes around, the whole body is the fascia itself. So you have the skeletal system, the bone, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, and of course things like menisci in between the knee. But then on top you have your fascial layer and then the skin. So, that whole layer itself is also really helped by foam rolling and ball rolling as well. I do want to direct you to a wonderful resource called The Role Model, which is Jill Miller's book. Jill's a fabulous yoga teacher and real expert on the body. And in her book, she has all sorts of regimens for different parts of the body using the balls. So that's a really good resource. I also want to remind you that as part of this online training, I'm offering my books at a discount. So my Bare Bones Yoga Guide to Anatomy, which breaks down bones, muscles, joints, and all the poses with a lot of great pictures and diagrams, and the poses are broken down into their key aspects, so the action words to use when you're teaching, the muscles involved, things to look for as a teacher from an anatomy challenge perspective. This book is $65 on the website, but I'm offering it to you for, I have to just take a peek, for $50. Okay, so this is discounted for you as part of the challenge. And my anatomy book on Amazon, Structure and Spirit, which covers both anatomy themes and spiritual themes in yoga practice, is $31.99 on Amazon, but $26.99 via the challenge. So if you want to get either of my books at this discount, just send me an email, Karen@barebonesyoga.com, and I'll honor the discount. So this concludes the Bare Bones Yoga Learn Yoga Challenge. I'm so happy to offer this to you for free as an online training. In the coming weeks, I'm going to be doing the Bare Bones Yoga Anatomy Challenge, and so that's going to really take a deeper look at the anatomical aspects of yoga practice. So even though some of that I covered in this challenge, it's going to be an even deeper dive into anatomy. I also just want to remind you that if you're interested in applying all of this information to your teaching and your practice, go on my website and download one or two of my online classes. They're only $10, and you'll get to take a 60-minute class as many times as you want once you download it, and the classes are loaded with anatomical-based cues. So I hope you've enjoyed the challenge. Please comment on one of the videos, because for every person that comments, you're going to be entered to win a free book. And I've gotten some great and really interesting comments so far, so I love hearing from you. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you and hearing you in terms of comments and just feedback in the next video. Namaste.